Hi, welcome to Modern Sages podcast. We're so happy to have you all here. Today we have a guest speaker, Dana. She is a dear friend of ours, a master life coach. We're so grateful to have her here with us. Welcome to Modern Sages podcast.
I'm Jen Gilbreth.
And I'm Candace Coons.
With over 25 years combined, we have delivered messages from beyond,
explored ancient healing wisdom, and integrated these profound teachings into our everyday life.
We are passionate about creating new ways of being human in the modern age by integrating the wisdom of the past with the present and coming into remembrance of who we truly are.
Are you ready to change your relationship to life itself? If the answer is yes, your journey begins now. Our first three shows, we were talking about what it means to be human in the Aquarian age, and also the fact that we are multidimensional beings, that we're physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual. And one of the things I thought about when we were going to bring Dana on, I was like, gosh, if I was to think about the emotional leg, this woman is a master teacher when it comes to this part of our lives. And I'm so excited to dive in and to hear all of her amazing wisdom. But before we get started, we need to talk about the tea that we're drinking today, our medicinal tea, because we always talk about that physical leg first and what we can do to take care of our sacred temples, our bodies. So today we are drinking ginger tea.
So good. We love everything ginger. Is just amazing.
Yes, and it has a lot of benefits.
It does.
It's an anti-inflammatory, an antioxidant. It helps a lot with digestion. Especially for people who are struggling with morning sickness. So it helps with morning sickness tremendously. And it also is supposed to have anti-aging benefits. So sounds good to me.
Clearly you've been drinking your tea, Candace.
Cheers it out.
Yes. Well, I'm Dana Parker, and I am a life coach, certified hypnotist, and Reiki master. And how I got into this really was probably very familiar to a lot of coaches and a lot of us. It came from my own story, my own pain. And at 23 years old, I had this secret, an emotional dam that I had been keeping since I was little. And I was sexually abused as a child and no one knew about it. And I stopped it. And at 23, I started talking about it. And what happened was this emotional dam inside me broke open, and all these emotions and flashbacks and all kinds of things started to take place that I didn't have tools for. I didn't have words for what I was experiencing. And it's almost like it took me on this roller coaster where my emotions were just driving my whole day. And so it set me on this journey of really diving in and exploring, okay, what are these? Why are they here? What do they do for me? How do I take back my power and get back in the driver's seat, but also honor my journey with it? And so it put me on this incredible journey of personal development and growth, energy healing, all kinds of things. And I'm also Pisces, so I came highly emotional. Yes. I came very emotional, very I feel like that was part of what I was here for. And so I've spent the last 12 years really diving into understanding emotions, where they come from, how it works, how to help people tune in and reconnect to their emotions. Because the interesting thing about emotions to me is it's part of the human experience. Everyone experiences it. No one escapes it. It's really interesting. And with that, we're not given tools. We're not even taught what to do with them, let alone name them or understand them.
Throw into the ocean, learn how to swim as you're drowning.
Yes. And not to mention culturally and generationally, we've suppressed, the feminine. The feminine has been suppressed, and that's a part of us suppressing our emotions too. It's why antidepressants and anxiety medications are at an all-time high. It's because no one knows what to do with that. They just blanket statement their emotions. I'm feeling anxiety, or I'm feeling depression, and they don't know what to do with it. So I feel like my mission here is to kind of break this down into what to do with them, what they're for, why do we experience them, and to train people how to tune back into that and take their power back with it so that it's not driving their life constantly.
I love that. I know one of the things that you mentioned too is not only was there a suppression, but also a shaming.
Yes.
And I think a lot of people, they get super nervous when they feel those intense emotions and they don't really know what to do with them. They don't have the tools, but also they feel so guilty about it. It's almost like they feel bad for feeling bad.
Right.
And so what I love about what you do is not only do you embrace this human experience and say, look, you're here to be human.
Yeah.
You're here to feel and to be this emotional being. Men and women feel emotions equally. There is no difference.
Yes.
There's no reason to suppress this. There's no reason to shame this. And so it's important to feel it. And what's awesome about what you do is not only do you give that sacred space for people to truly feel into their emotions and their experience here, but you also provide them empowering tools and say, okay, but you can also take this with you.
Yes.
And this is how you can cope with these experiences. And so it's a very empowering, liberating experience because they have this liberation of this intense energy, emotions, energy and motion.
Absolutely.
And they also walk away with tools feeling empowered through that experience. So I think this is such a key to embracing that inner child. You can't come into your heaven on earth or a heart-centered life if you don't embrace that feminine, but also the childlike innocence of your emotions. You can't even enter an Eden kind state or a heaven on earth for yourself unless you're able to come to peace with this pivotal part of ourselves.
It is.
So
absolutely.
I'd love to hear more too. Like, I don't know. I just seen you go through so much
in
this last decade, and you always inspire me so much because you hold such sacred space and you allow energy and emotions to move through you so healthfully. It reminds me of the innocence of children and how they can fully feel and be sad, but then be happy too, and to really fully live this life.
Yes. That's what I feel like my soul desires, is to fully experience everything possible. And the interesting thing is research is showing you cannot selectively numb emotions. When you numb the negative, the painful, you numb the positive, you numb your ability to experience more joy, more peace, more happiness. And so that's the value of saying, and really like integrating this idea, all emotions are acceptable. What you do with it matters. What you do with it, how you release it, how you let it out. The time and the space does matter too. And so I have different practical tools that I've used that have been really helpful in taking back my power with emotions. It's this idea that emotions are our greatest teachers. If you want to know yourself more, you get to know that emotional body of you. You get to know that, because your emotions will show you what you value. They'll show you the things inside that are calling for love and healing, the things that your soul came to learn. Like there's so much beauty in the emotions of what we experience. And as I've stepped into really integrating and living this way and really reminding myself again and again, my emotions are my greatest teachers. I step into, when I experience emotions, this loving curiosity. Like, oh, that brought up, oh, this person said something to me and it brought up so much emotion. What am I experiencing and why? And taking that time. And, sometimes it's not in the moment, because I don't know about, I think everyone's probably experienced this, where emotions hit you in a place where you're like, I don't feel like this is a safe space for me to go there. And it's okay. That's completely acceptable. And, I trained myself to shelf, okay, acknowledge and shelf it, and then set aside time to go back to it, to understand it.
And I think that's the important thing, is setting time aside to go back.
Yes.
Because we're so easily able to just push everything down, which then that causes havoc on your body.
It does.
Your emotional state, like your mental, like it affects all four legs of the table. But it's so easy to just push it all down. And then once you push it down, it's going to explode. And it's going to be worse.
That you don't necessarily want it to, or on the people you don't want it to. I remember as a young mom, having so many emotional experiences. So I grew up in a home where there was a lot of explosive emotion. As a child, there was tons of explosive emotion. You know, my parents were incredible. They absolutely did the best they knew how with what they had. And we were given no language for emotions. And I grew up in a family where it was just explosive. You bottle, and then it just explodes.
Can't hold it any longer.
And it goes out on the people you love the most. And it was one of the biggest sources of pain for me as a mom, you know, and it still brings tears to my eyes when my emotions would explode on my children and I'd watch their faces in pain because my emotions were exploding all over them. That is one of the most painful experiences as a parent. When you're aware and awake and you're watching it and they're mirroring to you the fear that it would take me back to childhood often of the things I hated the most. I had the hardest time with because I was just this sensitive little empath and really wanted to do everything perfectly for everyone. And I wanted to earn love. And so to have that experience and to wake up and say, no more, I get to bring this back into balance, to take my power back and to say, all of these emotions are okay. And as a parent, I get to start waking up and recognizing and asking myself questions instead of exploding on my children. Or if I need to, I remove myself, go in another room, let the emotions out in a safe space away from my children, and then go back and have a conversation. That's going to be the most healthy way. And I can't remember the last time I yelled at my children, but it's taken practice. It didn't just happen overnight. And it takes so much energy at first to really stop. Like when you're about to explode and you're so angry, to stop and say, okay, what am I feeling? What am I experiencing? Because our children actually came to help us heal, to show us our stuff. I believe that that's a part of parenting that they do not tell us. Yes. No one tells us that part.
So true.
They mirror to us. And so putting that in its rightful place, that's been one of the benefits of the addressing the emotions, you know, is my children, you know, seeing them as, oh, you're showing me what's calling for love and healing. And as I got lovingly curious, often when I would get emotionally charged, it all came down to overwhelm and not feeling enough for them. That's my stuff. That's my unhealed wounds. And it would come out in anger on them. And no longer, that doesn't happen anymore. Now it's like, oh, I know what this is. I know this feeling. I know what's happening right now inside. And then I explain to them, it's not you. I'm feeling overwhelmed in this moment. Give me a minute. I need a minute. You know? And so then they're seeing me in action, changing and transforming. And that's probably been one of the most rewarding places for me as I've really taken my power back with emotions.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I know one of the things that, you know, you mentioned earlier too, is how it's been scientifically proven that you can't choose what emotions you want to feel. And it's against how we've been domesticated collectively, because in this age, we're in a consumer society where we feel like we can go to the store and get this or that. We have access to fruits and vegetables and resources from all over the world. So there is kind of this, I think, even maybe subconscious, unconscious pressure on ourselves that we can't just go within ourselves and choose and say, okay, I don't want to feel sad or jealous or angry, but I want to feel happy and joyful and content. It's like, it's two sides of a coin. You can't have one without the other. So the best way to embrace this human experience is to understand this is a condition of being human.
Yes.
It doesn't define you as a being. You are separate from your body, your mind, you are a spirit,
Yep.
but you get to be human this time
Yes.
around. And that comes with the package deal.
Yes.
And so if you want to feel happy, if you want to feel content, if you want to feel peaceful and joyful, you have to embrace all emotion.
Yes.
And the experience of that within you. And the other thing too is, yes, I feel children mirror.
Yeah.
What calls to be healed inside of us. And I loved how you said it. What is calling for love and healing within yourself? And it's a very humble place to be, because we look at it ourselves as parents of our children and their children. And yet our children are our greatest teachers.
Oh, incredible teachers.
Yes.
Just beautiful mirrors.
Which makes sense, right? Because in truth, who are we?
Yeah.
Doesn't matter what our age is.
No.
Right.
Yes.
So it makes sense that would come from such a pure space.
Yes.
Of our children.
Yeah. Yep. I like to kind of look at it, what you said with embracing all of the emotions. There's so many great books on when you feel emotions, how they can get trapped in your body. And this is what creates dis-ease, right? In the body. And I like to see it as, if you allow yourself, you give yourself time and space to feel, to allow those to move out, to give them a voice, to have them move through. And there's lots of creative ways to do that. But when you allow that, then they move through instead of getting stuck. And, there's lots of different studies, but if you allow the emotion, they say 60 to 90 seconds, emotions will just flow. If you allow it, depending on, I think there's a lot of factors to it, depending on how much is triggering, what's coming up, the emotions, and, where it's coming from, but that allowing does something, and it makes room, because things aren't, once you bottle up so much, it's taking up so much room, and it takes up so much energy to suppress. That's where people get on medications. That's where those things happen. And I do want to validate, there's lots of there's the body and things like that with medications. And I'm not shaming medications at all whatsoever. There's a time and a place in having balance.
Absolutely.
And that's just one of the factors, one of the many. And so that suppression then takes up so much room, and there's no room for joy. There's no room for peace and enlightenment and the things we really want. And so allowing that to flow through, if you can see it as you're emptying out those things that you've carried, and you're making room, and then you purposeful in then saying, this is now, it's time for joy. And it's time for peace. Joy is just a huge part for me. Joy and fun and laughter and stepping into that. Yes. And really stepping into that and allowing that and saying, now I'm choosing into this. I had this really interesting experience. The last 3 years have been some of the most intense emotionally. And it's been really hard and so good in so many ways. Like I know now more than ever, these tools work. I know now more than ever that, yes, tried and tested through a year of the most intense emotions of my life. And, I've been having these incredible experiences where I kind of see the emotional part of us as the human part, that really human side that feels everything. And then there's the soul part of me that sees the bigger picture and came to have a human experience. And one time, it was the first Christmas. I had been separated, and, we were going through the divorce process, and it was so intense. And, there were so many emotions, and I gave myself during that time so much time just to feel, and like crying and weeping, and the kind that you're like, you have that really incredibly beautiful but ugly cry face, and there's snot, and there's tears, and there's noises coming out that you're, it's almost like stepping back. I was like, is that coming from me? The intensity of emotion. And what was so interesting is I went through these intense waves of emotion that I didn't even really know needed to be let out from years of these experiences, and dishonoring myself by being in something that I wasn't meant to be in.
That makes so much sense. It's like everything has purpose.
Yeah.
And it kind of like was a catalyst, even I'm not taking away from the fact that it's a painful experience, but it was almost like it opened the door for, because you gave yourself permission to fully feel that pain and go through that grief, then it went deeper and went into other areas of your life that needed that release and validation. And you were able to, because of that opening and trust in those energies in yourself, you were able to really clear out so much inside of you.
Yes. And at the end, what was so interesting, because there's always this, like, there's the intensity of the wave and you can feel it move out as you allow it. And then at the end, what was so interesting that I had never experienced before was the human part of me was like, that was so intense and I'm exhausted. But the soul part of me was just deeply fulfilled.
Yes.
Like so fulfilling that I allowed all of that I made room to honor the emotional part of me. And I made time and space for that. And that soul fulfilling experience built trust in myself, that I have my back, that I love me enough to really allow myself to go there in the right time and space. And it was in my home, in a safe space. I had one friend there that just could hold good space for me. And it was a safe, comfortable space for me, in the perfect place to have that experience. And I'll never forget it. I still can feel that, like, I am fully, like, from this day forward, fully allowing my soul to have the fullest human experience.
Fullest experience.
Yeah, it was incredible.
And if you think about kids too, right? They experience such an intense emotion and then it's gone.
Yeah.
But how often we don't allow ourselves to fully feel it, and then we hold on to it, or we over-identify, making it mean this is who I am because of this. So maybe you're feeling very heavy one day. It's like, oh, I'm depressed.
Right.
And then everything you do, you give yourself that label, which then causes you to feel more like that.
Right.
But you're not able to step aside and give yourself permission to see something else.
Yes. This is such a good point. And I love this, especially being certified in hypnosis. There are certain words that actually, if we use, anchor things into the subconscious mind more. So when we say things like, I am depressed, I am starts anchoring that into your subconscious mind.
Like, I am exhausted.
I am exhausted.
Oh, that's the worst
Or
one.
yes. Those kinds of things. Pay attention to the power of your language. Even in that, I'm feeling keeps it at the space of, it's not defining me, but I'm feeling, or I'm experiencing sadness. I'm experiencing disappointment right now. Give me a minute. It's like those kinds of things. Just even switching our language is really powerful for our mind to put emotions in their rightful place, which is so powerful and really, it's incredible.
It's not like you're going through throwing a fit, being inappropriate, doing things that are in inappropriate spaces. No. There are tools where you can fully feel things. And what I love is that you'll say, well, give me a minute. I'm feeling, or I'm experiencing this. Give me a minute and I will get back to you.
Yes.
And then you remove yourself from that environment and you into a safe space, either with a friend or by yourself, or where you can fully feel, express, maybe journal write. There's other, depending on the situation. But you're able to release that experience and then give your soul permission to fully feel the energy and the emotion that is going through you. And that's what I love about what you're saying, is you're not saying, hey, just go around crying and
like cry anywhere, everywhere,
do
and
whatever,
share everything, and open your whole heart to everyone. No, there are healthy ways to go about it.
The right
People
to hear
do.
your story.
They get to earn it and deserve it.
Yes. And so the other thing that I loved about what you brought up was this euphoric thing that you can feel. And what's a lot of people don't realize that this is what happens when you approach your feelings without judgment and with compassion and curiosity, and you give yourself full permission. It's like you can cry and wail and you can go deeply into this experience. In fact, I had this experience many years ago where I had such intense emotion after working with a shaman and doing a soul retrieval, and she told me that things were going to shift after that soul retrieval, and I had no idea. But anyway, I came home, and all of a sudden here it came. The parts of myself that fragmented off because of pain or trauma were back to be felt fully.
Yeah.
And so because I had the tools, I was able to fully give myself permission.
Mm-hmm.
I was crying so hard I couldn't stand, and my face was, I was face planted right in the carpet. And I couldn't get up.
Yeah.
And I was making crying and sounds that I'd never made, the wailing sounds that I've never made before. And it was interesting. I had this moment where there was a recognition and that it was like I was fully present with it, fully into it. And all of a sudden it was like I was hearing myself crying and wailing. And I'm like, who is the one that is hearing myself? Because when I was in that observation and recognition, there was such peace and calm in that observer energy. And I was like, wait a minute. So that's me. And so it was an interesting energetic experience because it was like I could hear, it was like I was at the eye of a hurricane where I could hear the storm of emotion was swarming around me, and I could see my stories and the wailing and the trauma. And I'm at the center of this calm energy, just this observer. And it was so amazingly, weirdly euphoric.
Yes.
In the midst of my pain. And I thought, oh, so my soul is longing for the full experience. And it doesn't define me on any level. I got to experience that. But there's something in me that's unchanging.
Yes, the soul.
Yes, that's beautiful.
And it was extremely powerful. And there was only one way to get there.
Yep.
And that recognition, it was right through like the eye of the needle.
Storm.
It was like,
oh, I call it buffalo courage. Buffalo courage. Like that is what you summon to feel emotions. Buffaloes actually are very different than cows. When they feel a storm coming, they'll turn and run to it and through it. Really? Cows will run from it. And it's so similar to emotions. When you run from your emotions, trust me, I did it for several years, lots of years. It gets worse.
Yes.
It actually is harder. You get, I gained extra weight, emotional eating, numbing, situational depression, anxiety. There was so much there that I experienced. And when I finally gathered that courage, that buffalo courage to go in, to feel the emotions, I actually remember the moment. I remember the moment I was in a class and we were going back to where things came from, like this idea that we've been carrying and where it initially came from. And I was like, I know what this means. If I open that box and I go into those emotions, I had so much fear of like, I'm going to get lost in it. It's going to take me away. Get out. I'll never get out. I'm so scared. And I was just this puddle, like of just emotions, and I'm scared, but something is calling me into that storm.
It's like in Frozen, just come.
Yes.
Come experience.
Yes. And I was so grateful that I dove in. That I dove in and said, I'm opening that box. I'm going in and learning too. I'm not going in to live there. I'm going in to sort some things out, to bring love to that space, because that's what many of us, what's interesting is emotions wire the brain, right? That's what the studies are showing. Dr. Joe Dispenza talks so much about this. And as children, a lot of us were emotionally conditioned to suppress. How many of us experienced deep disappointment for something we were so excited about got canceled, and we just, fall on the ground crying, and then we're spanked and sent to our rooms because we're crying. How many of us, so many of us experienced things like that, or experienced any type of intense emotion, and then we were reprimanded for it. And so our brains, there's this little person inside of us that's like, it's not safe. I can't feel this. It makes me bad. And if we can address those things and bring love, I remember at first there was tons for me of a man won't love me if I am emotional, and bringing love to those spaces, being so like giving myself what I wanted in those moments. And that's actually what saved me through the last couple of years, the divorce and all of the intensity of these huge life events in a short amount of time, these huge shifts, is I had set time on my way home from work to cry it out. And I'd cry and I'd out loud, like verbally in my car, like, I'm in so much pain and this hurts so much. And I feel like a disappointment and I feel not enough. And I'm hurting everyone. And it's better if I'm not here. And there's all these things that would just come out. And then I'd take a moment and I'd place my hand on my heart and I'd say, and these words were just so beautiful. You're doing so good at this human thing, Dana. I'm so proud of you. You're so brave for feeling this. You're so incredible for doing this. And it was some of the most sacred moments to, for the first time in my life, offer myself the love that I needed as a child, that I wanted as a teenager, that I want as an adult. And it was so, so beautiful it built confidence and an inner strength like I have never experienced before, where I know I can do and make it through any hard thing because I have my back now.
Yes.
I don't need other people. I can count on me. And it's nice to have other people. But different people are showing up for me now in my life that are more loving, more generous, because I do that for me. It starts inside and then the outside reflects, right? Beautiful.
I think that's so important to remember, is not to make ourselves wrong for it. Because there are so many times where it could have been you're in the car and you start crying and it's like, I can't feel this.
Right.
And make yourself wrong. And I just keep going back to, at one point I had so much heaviness going on that I was like laying on the floor, kind of like you were saying, just like sobbing. But I was like cursing at God. Like, why would you put me through this? Like, this, you're betraying me in every aspect. And I even find that when it comes to sessions, is maybe someone holds heavy guilt from someone's passing, or maybe they're just flat out angry with someone. And then they feel so much more guilty for feeling angry that it causes them to spiral more. But in truth, our ancestors, our angels, God, our higher power, our higher self is here to help us feel it, to move through it. And they're never going to make us wrong for experiencing it, because they see that this human journey
It's not easy.
is hard. It's dense. It's dynamic.
There's contrast. There's a lot of duality. There's a lot of things, and it doesn't mean anything about us. It's all for experience.
And
for expansion.
they see it and they know it, and they don't judge us for it.
They don't. That's one of the experiences that I had too, doing work with spirit, is that because so many people are so worried, you know, oh, my mother will be so disappointed in me and about the choices I've made, or the feelings I've had, or the anger and rage that I've experienced. And I'm such a bad person. And
now they know who I really am.
And now they know who I really am. And if I cross over, what am I going to have to face as far as punishment for my feelings or thoughts or experiences? And what I have found is it's completely opposite. Everyone who is across the veil knows how challenging this human experience
They're just cheering us on.
And they are just cheering us on. And even when we say really intense things, you know, it's like there's so much compassion, because they know that to go and to choose into having this human experience is one of the most advanced lessons and experiences that you can have in the cosmos, to take on a human form, a body and life, because they know that you're going to forget, forget who you are. They know that you're going to forget everything. And part of the challenge is to come home to yourself in that remembrance. And it's a true hero's journey.
It is.
And so it's so opposite on the other side. There's just so much compassion, so much love from our angels, our creators, our ancestors.
I remember one of the
amazing.
first times I made so this transition into this loving compassion, right? When I started giving that to myself, I started experiencing that from the other side way more, and really being open to receive it. And I remember one of the first times I did this, I chose into something that would have been like a mistake. The old me would have been like, that was a mistake. And I remember tuning into Jesus, who is just one of those people that I love and that's with me often. And I literally remember seeing him being like, what do you experience? Like in so much love that I was like, whoa, like that. You're right. That actually feels so good. And that helps the progress of our life more so than beating ourselves up and shaming ourselves. And I shouldn't have done that. And I'm a bad person. And now I'm not worthy, and choosing into those stories, it's like that moment showed me so much as he popped up and showed up that way for me of like, oh, that's what this is about. Having fun.
He was so joyful in your experience, because a lot of times we view Jesus as someone who suffered for our sins, who did these heavy things, who was a healer, was very grounded, was very, almost like very serious, it feels like for me. And so I love the fact that he was so joyful, and like that shows that we're here to experience that joy. And not only our ancestors, our angels, Jesus, who our higher power, our higher self, whatever we believe in, not only are they there to help us in times of heaviness, but they're here to celebrate in times of triumph. Even more, because our energy is raised. I like to think of it as like when we're here, like their energy is up high and ours is low at times. And when we can raise ours, like if we're here, they can still connect in with us. It just is more effort. As in we raise our energy, our vibration, we give ourselves permission to know we're more than just this. We have more of that frequent contact because we're also living in that joyful space. And I just keep thinking of the session I had. It was a while ago. I had a grandfather talk about his granddaughter. And he was like, I see this little girl spinning in a yellow dress outside. And she was like, last Sunday we had a family barbecue. My daughter was in a yellow dress. And he was saying how that brought him so much fulfillment and so much connection. And they were just having a party. And he was like, I am here throughout all your emotions. But what brings me the most satisfaction is seeing you have joy. And he wanted to give her that permission that she didn't have to suffer to feel connected to the divine.
I love that. Your joy is my joy. And it goes back and forth. That's so, so beautiful.
It's like a beautiful dance. Like, I just also keep seeing like these butterflies. It's been the thing since last night. It's like these butterflies just dancing.
Constantly.
I
love that. I love that. And if you can think about it too, in this way, here's another reason why to tune into the emotional body and why it can be so valuable. Emotion is energy in motion. Emotion is what fuels our thoughts and our actions, which lead to creation. And creation, if we want to be powerful creators in our life, we deserve to allow and fully embrace this emotional body. The more you do that, the more powerful your creations will be, because you're allowing yourself to experience those high levels of joy in the smallest of moments, and those fuel your life. You literally will have better, higher vibration ideas, thoughts, with those emotions that will come through that you can take action on. And so that's another, like, to me, that is one of the most valuable things, because we're all creators, and it's just consciously doing it and putting energy towards your creations. And part of that is taking your power back with emotions.
And I love how both of you brought up, it's like, well, what is the point if it's all going to be sad and hard and all of that? But it's the two-sided coin.
It is.
And that is the reward. The reward is that you do experience more joy. If you give yourself permission, you will experience more joy, more creativity, freedom, inner strength and empowerment and direction, confidence, all of the energies that we long for, including intimacy.
Yes.
And true connection, because you don't feel like you're hiding anymore. You're not ashamed of what is inside of you and the intensity of the energies inside of you. And you don't mind sharing them, and you don't shame them, and you don't share that. You don't shame others. And you know how to create sacred space for people to truly feel. And that creates true connection.
Is my connections that I have with my sisters in my life, with these women in my life, with a partner in my life, are just, there's so much depth and richness. And to me, like, it is soul fulfilling. Like, my soul, the connections that I have now are so different than the surface ones before. And, you know, the ones that are still around and with me, and the ones that have come in, it's like there's depth that just, there's actually, to me, no real human words to describe, but it's just a very fulfilling, enriching experience now.
I feel like it's an elephant in the room for a lot of people when it comes to emotions. It's so common to think, if I feel too much, I have some kind of disorder.
Yeah.
Or I'm not mentally available or
stable.
Right. Yeah, there's this space where it's like, I can't feel things, because if I do, then I'm looked at as I'm mentally unstable.
Right.
And so I think that's a huge subject that not a lot of people want to touch on.
Right.
But it's something we need to touch on.
Yeah.
Because it's so sensitive.
Yeah. I think that there's layers to this. And from what I've observed, and as I've worked with myself and other people, one is generationally women being, you know, put in the mental hospital because they were too emotional. I remember reading a list of reasons why someone would go into a mental hospital, like in the 17 or 1800s. And one of those was emotional. Too emotional. And so we have some historical wounds to heal there, and some historical things to look at within us. And I remember, you know, even recently, as I've interacted with a few different men that are bringing up some of those old wounds for me, saying like, your emotions aren't okay. And I'm like, but they are. And then bringing up those things, I remember like observing and tuning into that and recognizing, ooh, those are like the layers of the generational and the things that I'm connected to, and working through those and healing those and giving love to those.
Yeah. And it reminds me, who was saying, there was another spiritual leader, and I'll think of her name maybe later, but she was saying, you know, things are centered in spirit, even if it's hard, if it brings the energy of hope, healing, and it's helpful. And so I think that can help you kind of discern too. It's like, if you're having emotions that are so intense of hurting someone else, or hurting yourself, or taking out on someone else, that's not helpful, hopeful, or healing. And so in those kinds of particular spaces, it would be good to get some form of support through those intense rage energies. But if you're feeling intense sadness or jealousy or insecurities or feelings of not enough, or resentment and anger towards God, and these different things, because of the suffering, because of the intensity of the experiences, I think it's helpful to fully feel into those spaces so you can retrieve the diamonds of wisdom from those experiences, because it's happening on some level. These are agreements, you know, on soul agreements between us and others in this humanness and this human experience. And there's something there. And even if it's like what you went through, and being able to give you that which you wish you could have gotten from other people, but what you learned from that isolation and loneliness and heartache was that you could count on yourself.
A man in my life, just a bonus, amazing partner.
Those
my
are extra
children,
sprinkles.
My family. Yeah. Those are just extra sprinkles that are like amazing, but I've got me. I've got me. And to me, that is the point of this huge talk and evolution on self-love. Can I offer a practical tool?
Yes.
In this that I think is so valuable, especially for those of us that maybe haven't practiced this and aren't in tune with that emotional body, is scheduling time in your week. And like, I purposefully will set aside, especially if I'm going through a lot emotionally, 20 minutes, 30 minutes, an hour, whatever I intuitively feel, but on certain days at certain times, and nothing gets to fill those spaces besides me and my emotions. And really addressing that, to me, that put me in a space of power, because again, remember at the beginning of my journey, I feared getting lost in the emotions, getting lost in the stories of it. And so setting aside that time frame, I say to myself, 20 minutes, and I'll make playlists, because music is really moving for me. Music helps move emotions really well for me. So I'll make playlists purposefully for releasing my anger emotions or releasing my sad emotions, and I'll go to those playlists and I'll play and I'll just tune into that and give myself that time. And then once it's done, and I'm moving forward with hope. I'm moving forward with goals, with, okay, I did that one. It's kind of almost like I did 2 natural births, and there's pressure waves, it's like emotions are like pressure waves. And once you do it, it's like, I don't ever have to do that exact one again in that area. I might have similar feelings and similar ways of that expression, or from a similar experience, but I never have to do that one again. That gave me so much empowerment to address my emotions, to set aside time to feel them, but also to give myself time frames so I'm not lost in it. So I don't stay in it all the time. And so that you come out and you're like, okay, now I'm going to get this done. I'm going to do this. I'm going to empower myself. This is the new action I'm going to be taking. And you move. And that helps, I think, put you in a space of power with your emotions to kind of address what the elephant in the room,
And almost even giving yourself space to feel it, and then closing that space with gratitude.
I love that.
You are a human here, so why not embrace it, but also be grateful for it.
I love that.
When you step back, this emotion isn't me. I'm not this emotion. I'm experiencing it, and I'm so grateful I'm experiencing it. Even if it's hard to feel.
Yeah.
It's
that
power.
gratitude of like, good job, Sal. Good job. You did so good feeling today. I'm so proud of you. It's like, that's what we wish we would have heard as children, So we wish we could have had, in offering yourself that. I love that. It's such a beautiful addition.
Sometimes even giving yourself space to write it out.
Yeah.
Even if you feel like you can't release the emotion, or maybe you're just so angry, it's like you can go outside. I remember I was, one of my friends, me and her were living together, and we both just had so much heavy energy, so much anger. So one day we literally had eggs, and we went to like this random meadow, and we're like throwing eggs at this tree. Yeah. And it made us feel so much better. Yeah. And then one day we had these rotten potatoes, so we went to that same field. I'm sorry, that field probably got a lot from us. But we had a baseball bat, and we hit the potatoes, and we gave ourselves permission to feel that. Yes. Or sometimes you need to write it out, it and burn it, or talk about it. But I think it's so important that we have like a couple people or one person that can be our confidant versus spitting out the whole world. Right. Because that's not healthy either. Agreed. But it's like finding those boundaries for what's healthy. Yes. So you can give yourself full permission. Yeah. And not make yourself wrong for it.
Up to this point, most people feel so bad about feeling bad. And as we shift from that mind to the heart, and we go into heart-centered living, not only is it important for us to embrace this emotional experience of what it means to be human without shaming, with curiosity and compassion, but for yourself, but also to create support systems where you can go and feel safe in your tribe, to be able to talk to other sisters, to be able to, and talk to other brothers, and to be able to be held in a space where there is no shaming for feeling. Yes. Because at this point, it's like the women, not only did we feel bad about what we felt, we felt bad for feeling bad, and we try to suppress those energies. But also too, there was so much cattiness as a result, where there was like, gosh, did you, so-and-so has got, they've just lost, they don't have it, or there's attacking, or so I feel like this is a major shift, because I think this is why people are coming together in groups more, and trying to cultivate these tribal, soulful, true connections. And what are your thoughts about that? And what have you noticed?
I have some really good thoughts here. And again, kind of practical tools that have really helped me and helped other clients. And I don't have all the answers, and there's a lot of trial and error that can happen in this, but some things that I think are really important. One, before you act and start speaking in a space, think about why, especially when it's a highly triggered space. Maybe a friend of yours is coming, having a hard conversation about something you did that hurt her feelings, and that can be a hard conversation. That can be heightened emotions, and you can easily want to go on the attack and the defense. And before you do that, observing, taking a moment. It's like, when my children, I'm experiencing overwhelm, I'm like, I need a minute. Taking a minute and getting lovingly curious. Why am I feeling this way? Oh, I feel like I'm bad and I did something wrong. And then I'll go into, well, what was my intention with my sister when I showed up that way? Oh, I wasn't really thinking about how it would affect her. And so then I know that's my part. And I'll ask myself in every situation, what's my part? I'm not taking on the whole thing, because we have this spectrum of accountability. We have the blamer. We do this all in different areas of our life, but we have the blamer that's like, it's all your fault. And they don't want to take any accountability. And then there's the over accountable, which is just as harmful, of it's all my fault and I have to fix everything. And I'm so sorry. And I did everything wrong. And I was more there. And so now, coming into balance in any situation now that's triggering, and somebody's coming to me and wanting to have this connection and wanting to say, you hurt my feelings. I go into that space of what's my part, and taking accountability for that. And then asking myself, what was my intention when I acted that way? Did I purposely hurt them because I was hurt, or did I unintentionally? And then I apologize for that. And one of the other things, so think before you act and before you speak, really go into that observation mode. One of the other things that's become so valuable that I've observed is this ability, when someone comes to me and they're sharing with me their triggers, their vulnerabilities, their insecurities, their hurts, even if they're angry, that is a hard space to be sharing with another human being. That's pure courage. And if I meet it with my stories, it's going to be explosive. If I meet that with my stories, it will be explosive, and it will cause more harm. And this happened actually when I was going through my divorce. My 12-year-old came to me, and this was such a beautiful moment in action. And he said, Mom, I need to talk to you. And so we sat in my little office, and he said, I'm so mad at you. And in that moment, I had two options that I saw. One, I could show up defensive and defend myself and tell him all the reasons why I was justified in divorcing, and he was angry about the divorce, and then that I chose that. And I could show up that way and then wrong him for feeling what he felt. And that's what happens in those moments when we become defensive. We wrong the other person in feeling that way, and it creates disconnect. And so in that moment, I was lucky enough to be so aware to say, oh, this is a moment. All my stories go on the shelf, and I am here for him and his emotions to validate and to hear his full story. And so I was able to, as a mother, sit there in that sacred space to hear his anger towards me, about the situation, and say, I hear you. I know that would be so hard. And just be there for him. Oh, it was so beautiful. At the end, he was like, okay, that was it. It's like, okay. And then for me, we went on, and I kept going, like things were good. And then this shelf, there were so many emotions that came up from it about me as a mom, and about who I was. So, within an hour, I went for a drive, and just like, like sobbed it out and cried it out and honored those parts of me that like, that was hard to hear. That was so hard to hear. And so to me, that's like the most healthy thing we can do, especially in our closest relationships, is if we can learn and become aware of how to shelf things and be there for someone's stories and emotions and take accountability for our part and show up in love. And then ask for that in adult situations. I think we also deserve to say, hey, can I have a turn now to share my stories of what that brought up in me and my own fears? And that practice of showing up for each other that way as women, as partners, to me, that is incredible in creating real connection and intimacy when you can do that. And it's easy to say, but it's no small feat.
In a nutshell, shelf your story. Listen.
Yep.
Hold space.
Yep.
And then allow that person to be fully present with that person so they can truly process what they're experiencing without shaming them, just holding compassionate energy. Even if it appears that it's coming at you.
Yes.
Being able to hold that space with courage, because it's tremendous courage for them to do it.
Yeah.
But I must say, it's tremendous courage for you to do that as well.
It is.
And to be able to not blame or not project your stories onto the other individual for their experience.
Yeah.
To honor that individual for their experience and allow that energy to fully move through them without shaming them.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Not to choose into their story is true about you, to observe it. Like there's so much power in that, saying, this is their story. I'm not accountable for what they're saying. I'll observe it. I'll check in to see if there's some things for me to look at on my end, but to not take their story personally or our stories personally.
Yes.
Because it's interesting how it can stop the emotion. It can stop the connection and the full experience when we bring our stories to the table and it's explosive. This is how those fights end up just crazy.
Oh, yes. You know? And we project our personal experience onto someone else, you know, that then all of a sudden it's not about them anymore. Now it's about you.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
So, that I think is so important. Like with, gosh, I love how you're doing this, because it's like an onion layer process.
It is.
You're loving yourself in the way that you need to be loved. So you can count on you.
Yeah.
And then when you come into relationship with another, then what you can do to hold space for an individual processing deep emotion is to shelf your stories, to fully listen and be present. And then as you move into a group experience, it's really the same process, because if someone in the group is sharing these intense emotions, again, shelf your story. Don't project your experience onto someone else, and fully listen, fully allow them to process and to feel. And then you can take a moment, if it has something to do with you, if you're a part of their story, then you can internalize this experience, truly listen to every detail and say, I think another one is mirroring and saying, and making sure that you're hearing them correctly and saying, okay, so let me make sure that I hear you correctly. And to repeat back to them and have them keep talking about it until they feel that you understand and you truly hear them. And then be able to process that and say, okay, is there something within this experience where I can take accountability of something that I said or something that I did? I could have approached that in a more loving, respectful way. And then share that with them.
Yeah.
Am I hearing anything correctly?
Yeah. I absolutely think that that's powerful. And, you know, offering the power of offering your self-love and invalidating your own emotions is you practice it here and then you can do it out here.
Work from the inside out.
You practice it first with you and then you'll become better for other people.
Yes.
That's why I could do that for my son, because I'd been practicing in my own emotions through the experience and I could do that. So there's power in that. Also recognizing in so many ways, like a lot of us can go into guilt and shame and I was a bad person that I did that and caused you pain. And remembering, and I say this all the time to my kids, I'm still learning how to be a mom, or I'm still learning how to be human. And it's not an excuse, but it's a truth. Like there are situations that I'm in now. Like I went back into the dating world. There's situations that I'm in now that I'm like, I've never experienced this before. I don't actually know how to do this. And so it's going to be messy. It's going to be like learning to walk. You fall down and then you're like, okay, get back up, and you try again, and you keep falling and you get back up and you learn. But from every situation, you know, at the end, I think where I felt you going is when you mirror back to somebody, then you can find solutions of like, how would you like to next time? How would you like me to show up? And then really consciously make that effort and work on that in that relationship, you know, or if what they ask for doesn't work for you, it's not something like I've had people come to me and say, I want you to spend this amount of time with me every week for this long. And I'm like, that doesn't work for me right now.
And that's something that keeps popping up in my mind is it's so easy going back from the inside out. It's so easy to go the outside to go in, to rely on light workers or energy workers or healers. And of course, everyone has their space and their place to help with that. But ultimately, it all comes back, it has to start within. And you can have someone help be a catalyst to bring that within. Yeah. But if you're going to someone for guidance, you're going someone to receive answers for you, and you're not taking the time for yourself, that's also something that's so powerful.
100%. I agree.
Is you can go to other people, they can come to you, but are you both working together to connect back within?
Yeah.
Because that's where that heart-centered living, that's what we're learning in the Aquarian age, is that heart-centered space to feel it. And sometimes you do need someone to help be a catalyst to bring in information. But how often are we relying on someone else for that? And maybe that's because we're trying to escape from actually feeling our emotions. So we look outward instead of actually going within to do the thing that we know we need to do. We just are resisting it.
Well, isn't it interesting too? Because there's this collective idea that up to this point of our expansion, that it's irrational to feel, it's irrational to get too consumed in those energies in your life or to really be with those energies in your life. At the same time, here we are in the Aquarian age. And one of the strengths of the Aquarian energy is autonomy and accountability. And this is the ultimate accountability, to be there for yourself first. You can't wait for everyone else to say or to do the right thing. You have to take a stand. You have to live by your truth. You have to do your work. And then you go out and you serve others and you're there for other people. So, you know, that starting in that spiral, starting from the heart space and moving out, is the accountable, logical thing to do. And so, and we are to be emotional.
Emotionally.
It's the emotional, accountable thing to do.
Absolutely.
Yes. I love it. Awesome.
Well, I think this is a good place to kind of wrap up. Dana, how can people get a hold of you? What are you up to in that space? What's your little spill?
So I have a group coaching program that I'm doing called Reclaim You. It's really based in the foundation of a lot of what we talked about today. The 4 agreements of the empowered woman is the area that I focus in on. And it's really knowing yourself, trusting yourself, loving yourself, and acting for yourself. And so I have those that are ongoing, and I have one that I'm doing now, and then I have another one I'll be doing in January. So you can find that at innerworldmovement.com. And I'm also on Instagram, innerworld.dana. And those are the best ways to check me out and get a hold of me.
That's so awesome, Dana. Thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you,
It's been a joy.